folks. The next session, come on up, ladies, have a seat, or yeah, have a seat. The next session, I think, is a really important one, structuring your department, whether that's a KM department, KM and innovation department, or some combination of all of those things. I had a few conversations with Janine and Kay and Amanda, and I tell you, I wish we recorded the conversations because they were so great and there was so much great information shared. And you'll learn that they've all come from different backgrounds and have different structures of their organizations. And I think you're going to learn a lot about this because I think this is one of the things that it's this weird thing right now, right? Because of the innovation part and the longstanding KM part. I'm really excited about this panel, so I'm going to turn it over to the ladies.
Am I turned on? Wait, yeah. Let me just make sure I can do this. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Stewart. I am the Assistant Director of Practice Innovation at Mayer Brown. I've been there officially 1 year as of yesterday. And I have the typical history of a KM attorney, innovation person. I practiced for a couple years, moved into the innovation space in KM at a few different law firms, and also worked on the vendor side at Practical Law and running customer success at Casetext. So I kind of have that bridge of the vendor experience and the internal experience, KM and innovation.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Kay Kim. Nice to see so many of you here. I am the Chief Practice Innovation Officer at Paul Hastings. And my background is I practiced for many years. I practiced for over 10 years in both big law, and then I went in-house. I went back into big law, various roles on the business operations side. And then 1 year, the word innovation became very trendy in law firms. And so I was lifting up innovation at an AmLaw 100 firm. I am now at Paul Hastings. Most recently, in between, I was at Simpson Thacher working in a similar role. And we'll talk about our structure and kind of what falls under each of our remits in a bit.
Hi, I'm Janine Zato. I am the Senior Manager of Knowledge Solutions at Cleary Gottlieb. And my background is really focused on investment banking. So I did that for what felt like a very long time and decided for some reason to move over to law from there. And I was leading strategic initiatives for a law firm at that time, moved into a Director of Business Development and Marketing role, and decided that the KM industry is where all of the really cool data was to actually push forward client delivery business development, and so moved over to Cleary at that time about 7 years ago, supporting the knowledge solutions function, and I've been doing that ever since.
So we thought that having worked at a few different law firms and speaking with all of you at these conferences and in our community, we know that each firm is set up a little bit differently. We all have the same goals, the same strategic direction, but we're all structured differently. We thought it would be interesting to dive into how our teams are structured and how those structures, those teams all work together on a few key initiatives. So first, we're going to go through our different law firms and talk about how we're all set up, and then we'll dive into those initiatives and talk about how we're working together.
Great.
So I will start off with Mayer Brown.
And just so you know, I think Patrick mentioned this, like we could talk forever on this stuff. So we're just kind of inviting you into our own little like coffee talk that we tend to have when we're together.
But we'll stay on time.
We keep
That's
saying,
right.
Save it for the panel. So at Mayer Brown, we started a program about 5 years ago called Embrace. So the firm got together and understood that a cross-collaboration, cross-functional team was really important to push the firm forward. So all of these teams, while separate teams, all work together under this umbrella called Embrace. So we have the innovation team, the knowledge team, LPM, which is pricing and LPM, and then IT. We have a specific group within IT that is tagged to work with us. So on the innovation team, we run practice innovation, engagement. Basically, we are managing all of the different legal technologies. We're running generative AI initiatives, working with the lawyers to understand what their points of friction are and how we can help them get up to speed with incorporating these tools into their workflows. We also have a custom development team within our platform, developing solutions on Neota Logic and Fliplet and the other no-code solutions. And then we have a data innovation team, and they are focused on organizing the data, helping us get up and running and figure out what data we need to deliver on our projects. We're also developing an internal LLM, and that team is tasked with that. Our knowledge team, again, a separate team, but one that we have to work together with to really get to the end users, to get to the lawyers and understand what the practice groups need. Their knowledge council, and they actually, while there is a global chief knowledge officer, they really report directly to the practice groups. So that's been interesting in working with them as our subject matter experts, but really they're also really brought into the practice group stuff as opposed to being our go-to for the innovation project. So that's been an interesting push and pull in understanding what their priorities are. LPM is, straight up LPM, working with pricing, pitches, et cetera. But we are pulled in and we're trying to get them to use our innovation tools when they're managing their projects. And then our practice applications team, that's the IT team that is supporting all of the innovation initiatives. So we have a team directly in IT to support us, but also they're really kind of just our gateway to the rest of IT and helping us figure out which teams we need to support and grow our initiatives.
All right.
Great. So for Cleary, we have a unique infrastructure that is continuing to evolve on a regular basis. In the 7 years that I've been at Cleary, it's been probably 2. This might be the 3rd restructuring that we've had across our KM function, business development function, and in conjunction with our IT. So I'm really excited about this phase of the journey because we have some new leadership roles that are really trying to define strategy and also formalizing our innovation function officially. So at the core is, as Amanda said, is our practice development team, which really owns the knowledge management function. They, in addition to the knowledge management function, are responsible for practice management and practice administration work as well. They are considered the top clients for the practice innovation and knowledge solutions team that sit within the CIO program. Our practice innovation team is really young. We are less than 6 months into defining what that strategy is, and we've added our last role as of about 2 weeks ago, so really new there. The knowledge solutions team has been around for 7 years, and what we have been focused on is really the client delivery aspect. So really understanding the data and the information that we have for our KM function and how we can work with business development to bring that forward. That is also a responsibility that covers our library operations, so all of our resource management and data associated with those products. And then also we own the firm intelligence data program, so that is also including our systems like Foundation in partnership with our CRM, et cetera. The key to these 2 groups is really a partnership and a collaboration. So as we've been setting up this new innovation platform and really tapping into the talent that we have in the knowledge solutions team, how do we work together to really think about what the firm's strategy is for bringing legal technology tools? We are working right now on defining those roles and responsibilities, setting up that operational framework, and really trying to figure out how do we work together to deliver those aspects to our lawyers. We do also have the benefit of having our peer teams and functions that we can leverage for innovation purposes. So that would be our e-discovery and litigation technology teams, our legal project management team, which is ever growing, and also our Cleary X partner and subsidiary. And what we partner there is market awareness, product evaluation, ideation, et cetera. So really all coming together to bring the best and the newest technology to the firm. From a reporting structure, we have our Chief Legal Operations Officer that is also brand new to our environment. And we have aligned new practice group chairs and AI committees to really help drive and bring forward that strategy.
Okay. You're going to get these slides, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So as I mentioned, I'm the Chief Practice Innovation Officer at Paul Hastings. This is our structure. We really tried. It was so funny how many times we had to create these org charts to make sure we were covering the same thing because every law firm really just looks so differently. There's pros and cons to a lot of it. This is kind of our structure here. So practice innovation at Paul Hastings, we've got a pretty broad remit, which I actually love. It helps so much when you have things under one umbrella to make sure we're all moving in the same direction. But our team, and I purposely put IT right next to us because we really work hand in hand. This is a topic that we'll talk about later. But you all know that in innovation, you really can't move the needle unless you are working hand in hand with your IT team. I put finance on the side there because we talked a little bit about pricing and LPM. They sit in our pricing and LPM function. I've been at the firm for a year and a half. This has been evolving as well, but not too much. I walked into a department that was set up pretty well. We have a knowledge and innovation team. These are our knowledge and innovation lawyers. They are embedded in practice groups. They are the face of our department when it comes to the practice of law. They are attorneys who have bespoke experience in the practice group in which they're embedded. We do whatever we can to make sure they're not representing too many groups at once. We want them to bring the value at the highest level. And to me, that happens when you actually know how these people practice and you've done it in the past. I will just share a little tidbit on that function. When I first came in, the name of the title used to be a practice innovation and knowledge attorney. We deliberately changed that title to knowledge and innovation. For me, it's really important to get that knowledge part right before you start slapping technology on top of things. That was a very deliberate move for us. We changed it to knowledge and innovation attorney, but very important roles within our firm because they are the face to our lawyers who are our clients at the firm. I'm going to actually go all the way to the other end for practice management. They too are people who are embedded in the practice groups, but they focus more on the business of law. This was a relatively new function that I introduced to the firm. We had a version of it, but when I first came, we had like 3 people. We are now up to like 15. It scaled really fast in a year. It's one of those things, you introduce this type of resource to a practice group, and then they don't understand how they kind of functioned beforehand. And it's really just people who have more of a business-minded approach to running a practice group. So as you can see, it's about efficiency, being smart in the way that we practice, being smart in the way that we operate our practice groups like a business. We also have research services that falls under us. That should be pretty self-explanatory. Within there, we have a team of phenomenal analysts who are doing more than just pulling resources. They are doing phenomenal research. And then we also have a team that's kind of managing our technology. And as many of you know, more and more, it's just all kind of combining all the great tech coming from a lot of our research services providers. So having it all together helps a lot. We have a separate practice tech solutions team. This is a team made up of former lawyers, product managers, project managers, litigation technologists. These are the folks who you probably will see the most at our conferences, going out there, making sure we're aware of what's out in the market, bringing the right solutions, pairing really closely with our knowledge and innovation attorneys to make sure that we're hearing from our practicing lawyers to see what their challenges are and trying to respond to them. We really do. We have some who are building low-code, no-code solutions, automating. Our preference is always to see if there's someone out there who built it already and spent a lot of money on research and development to do it. We'd rather go there first, but once in a while, as you all know, sometimes you have to visualize data a certain way. Sometimes you have to build, customize things a certain way. Lit Solutions is a new program that we kind of introduced to our firm. When I arrived a year and a half ago, every litigator pulled me aside in the hallway saying, can you please pay attention to Lit Solutions? E-discovery is an area that many of us may have under our remit, but it goes beyond. We try to look at it holistically. It's not just e-discovery in a silo, it's the Lit Solutions, it's the case management tools. What do our litigators need to get end-to-end support when they're working on a matter? We also have an equivalent kind of transactional services center. This was a new function that I never had the luxury of having before, but seasoned corporate attorneys who supplement our deal teams at lower costs, leveraging technology. So if you have Kira, eBrevia, Luminance, these are the folks who are really well versed in it and supplementing our teams on that. So that's our structure. And most importantly, we wanted to get through that pretty quickly so we can have the discussion here.
And I think the interesting part of a lot of our conversations have been around how structured do you have to be successful to deliver a lot of what we're trying to do at all of our law firms. We had lots of debates about what that looks like. Do we need structure? Do we not need structure? But essentially, the thought is, as long as you have a strategy, you have talent, you have the roles and responsibilities, and people are working together in a collaborative aspect and a partnership, then you could actually work together, to achieve the firm goals.
I think we looked at our structures and we had so much fun just trying to understand where everything falls. But our topics always came back to the same things. Well, what are your challenges? What are you trying to accomplish? What's standing in the way? And it really is there's nothing unique about what all of us are doing in law firms. But at one point we were like, I think I said like, oh, we don't need structure. Who cares about structure?
Right? No, we actually
let's
need
debate
so
that.
much structure.
We need a bit of structure to
Yeah.
get there, and also really what came out of the end of this talk is the factors that are driving the AI strategy and our data strategies and all of the principles that go into making it happen. So you might not need specific structure for titles or roles, but as long as you're thinking about the approach to that strategy in the same way, then you can have a lot of success and pretty fast.
And we didn't. Oh, go ahead.
One of the key things that I think is so important when we're all, especially while you're operating under different umbrellas, is that you have the same priorities. You need to really be aligned on what you want to focus on in the short term and the long term, because when you are reporting to different managers or to different bosses, you might have different targets for the year, and being able to actually push these projects across the line. It's so important that even if you're on different teams, the people focused on these initiatives really have the same level of priority.
Yeah, and you do have to have that alignment on what you're trying to achieve. But I think in the end, I think I said no structure is necessary because I had the luxury of everything falling under one umbrella. And when you have everything falling under one umbrella, you're completely aligned. And then as we were talking, we're like, well, actually, it's not that easy when it's all different parts of the organization trying to be aligned. So that was a really interesting conversation that we have. And it's not like it can't be done. It just requires such a level of collaboration and alignment on vision that's so critical. And so we picked 4 topics that we thought, well, these are things that we just kept talking about in our conversation. So we just thought we would share with you. These are factors that impact our structure, kind of how we achieve what we're trying to achieve. And so we're going to start with data strategy. And then we have 3 other ones, and we'll just kind of tell you how each of our firms are handling that. If it's helpful at all, we found it helpful.
So when it comes to data strategy, it's not a new term at Cleary. We're doing it essentially without knowing that we're doing it. The way that we have it set up, though, is you have each business function that really owns their data, the data governance, the architecture within their own framework and their function. What we're trying to do out of a project that's led by Practice Innovation in partnership with Knowledge Solutions is to expand on that and really think about data that we have at the firm within all the business functions, inclusive of knowledge management and business development, and thinking about it from a more of a knowledge engineering perspective. And our IT infrastructure, we really have a proprietary, somewhat sophisticated data management system that takes data from our core business systems, runs it through data marts and data warehouses, and has a lot of linear data connectors downstream to all of our systems. So that works out really fantastic, except when you don't have any of that data that's sitting in silo systems or that's duplicative in multiple systems that doesn't have the right definitions or mapping and all that fun stuff that we deal with on a daily basis. What do we do with that data? We also have, with new products that we're bringing in from an innovation perspective, a lot more data and information that we're collecting that's sitting in those systems. So how do we get access to our knowledge managers and our innovation teams to be able to use and action that data when it's sitting kind of in a messy spaghetti kind of world? The approach that we're taking is thinking about not breaking what we have today, which is pretty successful from our core business systems, but actually tapping into that and developing something that our knowledge management and business development teams can really utilize. That is really from a data lake approach, except I'm trying to make this more of an MVP aspect, so I call it our knowledge pond. So it's essentially our smaller aspect from an MVP perspective to really grab that data that is sitting in Foundation, CRM, our SharePoint systems, in Excel spreadsheets, in some of these products that we're bringing in from an innovation umbrella, and really trying to understand what that is, how to marry it and make it actionable. So thinking again from a knowledge engineering perspective, and we're hoping that with the success that we have from these programs and the use cases that we can go to our business leaders and the other functions and really expand on that aspect to eventually form a lake. We're doing that by bringing in some data engineers and data scientists and really trying to frame out what is the data that we have available that we can leverage right away and then build and expand on that.
And I love how your firm, or you're taking the mindset of start small and start to use it and see what you really need and add to it. So we had a new CIO join our firm last month. And while we have a data team within the innovation team, a lot of the data strategy sits within IT. And we have a big project about figuring out our data strategy, and then a lot of projects stemming from that, like Foundation and leadership dashboard or intranet redesign, all of that. And I think right now we're figuring out the pros and cons of, do we focus everything on the data strategy, clean that up first, and then focus on the tangential projects? Or do we try to do MVP and focus on different data sets and start to deliver? Obviously, I'm pushing for the latter, being on the innovation team, but I think we need to figure out what's right for the firm.
Wouldn't it be beautiful if really we could just clean up all our data, get it all set, and stop all business, and then pick it back up? But it's not really how it works. We promised we wouldn't all talk on one topic, but we can't help ourselves. So I'll just tell you, data, Joshua knows this, it kills me. I hate where law firms are with data. I think for the most part, many of us are in a very similar boat, is that you walked into a law firm, everyone was doing their thing. You said I have someone who's thinking about data in our knowledge area. All of us have someone thinking about our data in our area, just like BD does, just like finance does. The key to me is who's truly owning the whole firm's data initiative. And I think there's a lot of firms that just don't have that, central point, truly leading it with everyone being a part of it. And so everyone wants it. To me, I feel like I'm a customer of getting the data strategy right. And I know I have to play a role in it, but there's always a lot of but who's really owning this? Oftentimes it falls in IT. It might be at the operations level. It's usually, sometimes it might be a knowledge and innovation if someone just says I'm going to take it because I can't stand it anymore. So I feel that's kind of what everyone's running into. And, we're not in a different place where I can get what I need because the data is there. But I also can see behind the scenes that this is not the most efficient way for us to be doing this. I get my data, but it takes 100 times longer than it should because we don't have it nicely organized and pulling and in a lake. And I think that's where most of the firms really are. To those of you who got past that, yay for you. That is awesome. Your jobs must be so great. So we have to, collectively as an industry, figure out how do we just get there without stopping business. This is a conversation we have all day long of I want to do this, but let's just realize we can't stop business because each of us have something to do. BD has stuff, finance has stuff, we have stuff. So it's just a really interesting dynamic. We are going to lean to consultants to help us because it's just too big a project. All right, should we go to the next one?
Yeah.
All right, I think I need to go up. The next topic was just generally, I feel like we can go through this one because it's so obvious pretty quickly. This dynamic of IT, innovation, knowledge, and InfoSec. How many of your InfoSec, I'm just really curious, how many of your InfoSec teams are under IT? Just out of curiosity, I'm so curious. Okay, and then how many of you have InfoSec under your general counsels group? That's us. And then how many have it just somewhere else? Or both? Oh, governance and yes, that's a good point. So sometimes you might have info governance separated from InfoSec for the checks and balances. I think oftentimes they might be together, ours will all be under the general counsel. But this dynamic is so interesting to me. I, you know, over the many years that I've been doing this, I feel like every year I just learn so much. This is probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last 5 years of how important this relationship and dynamic is. We all know that if you're doing anything with tech, you're so reliant on IT, but I would say in the last few years, the amount of influence that comes in now from our InfoSec teams is so important for us to be able to move the needle in the way that we need to move. So I don't know, we just talked about this is just one of those areas where it looks different in law firms, but my gosh, I will never, ever take for granted this relationship I have with my two colleagues in these two spaces.
One of the initiatives that I think this is really coming to a head, or at least it's interesting to me. So I think historically it's been Microsoft is owned by IT, the point solutions are owned by innovation, KM, and now that Microsoft Copilot is coming around, I think it's making it a little blurred because we're leading that Gen AI initiative, understanding the use cases on the innovation side and the KM side, but then IT is coming through with Gen AI use cases that are going to be affecting the working style and the workflows. So how do we work together and take the lessons that we've learned from rolling out Gen AI in the past 2 years and bridge that with the IT ownership of it and help? I'm trying to make them see us working together as a partnership and how we can just make this even better when we coordinate our efforts. But I do think there's a little bit of a scarcity mindset right now with those solutions.
So adding on to that collaboration piece, all three of these areas within Clery sit under one umbrella. So we still have those kind of stopgaps and competing priorities and kind of strategies for what we're doing with our own LLMs. So it happens even within the same department. So the collaboration and partnership, I'm going to continue to say this, is what's really important to make sure that you have a clear vision of what your strategy is and who's playing the part in bringing that forward and making sure that you're all trying to come together for really one initiative.
Yeah, that prioritization topic is for real. I think this is typically what historically has been a very common scenario in law firms. You have an IT department that is stretched, never enough resources, trying to keep the lights on, trying to stay out of the news, like just, doing what they need to do. And then you have like these shiny innovation people going like, I got solutions for you people. And then trying to get like IT to get them to do their stuff. And then you have InfoSec who's saying, well, this is dangerous. This is really scary. Not interested at all. Let's keep everything on-prem, please. And that was typically like a relationship that happened in law firms. And probably many of us live with that and had to learn how to navigate that. For me, one of the best things that I could offer to my colleagues in those departments is really trying to understand how hard their jobs are and what their motivations are, right? And for them to understand, like, oh, guys, I'm being asked to differentiate ourselves with innovation. So can you work with me? We spend so much time together trying to remove the barriers that I have, whether it's client consents, whether it's outside counsel guidelines. I spend a lot of time working with our InfoSec team, saying, I understand what you're trying to do. Give me guardrails. Give me a checklist. Don't talk to a vendor unless they have this, this, and this. I will follow it, and then we can move things together. And for IT, it's really about spending time together about our priorities. I understand that, Microsoft upgrades come first, and I understand that, there are certain priorities that are firm-wide that I just can't even compete with. But where are we going to make room, and how much are we going to make room for my projects in this big prioritization list? And these are things that it doesn't happen unless you're having these conversations regularly. And that is a good segue into, so what happens when you start talking about AI? And specifically, at least in this crowd, we know that AI does not equal Gen AI. So let's talk a little bit about Gen AI and how, that's changing the dynamic of how we're even operating in our own structures.
So I'm curious, how many of your firms have Gen AI strategies currently? Or policies, I'm sorry.
Policies, a policy.
Ours is, yeah. All right. And how many of you are allowed to put client data in? Okay.
Can I raise my hand halfway?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're allowed with client
Depends on
consent.
the client.
So it depends on the client.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, obviously, yeah,
Yeah.
the blacklist. So our Gen AI strategy has been an interesting one. In the past 2 years, we have a platform, a generative AI platform that we are giving to end users, and we've really let everyone have access to it, putting in guardrails, obviously, and policies that govern it, and training in place. But our policy has been something that's evolved a lot through just even the last year. We've had many iterations of it as the technology changes, as the space changes. And coming from the innovation side, obviously I'm trying to push the boundaries and getting them to be more comfortable with it. But it's something that we've had to work with InfoSec on to understand what are the checks, what are the things that we need, and working with risk to understand what they're comfortable with and how we start those conversations with clients and with lawyers and make sure that we're covering all our bases. So it's been an interesting one. I think some of the main points that we've uncovered this past year I thought I could share. The things that we're really thinking about are making sure that the solutions are not training on any of our data. I think that's kind of table stakes, right? Making sure that we are owning the encryption key. So some of this is actually working with our vendors and educating them on what we really need in order to be able to put their solutions into action within the firm. And then mitigating hallucinations is obviously a huge concern, and something that we really need to take ownership of in the training aspect and making sure that our attorneys understand and our business services people understand how to use these tools carefully, making sure to research and vet and check everything. There's like the trust but verify mindset, but I actually don't think we should trust that much. I think it's just verify it. And it's been a really interesting project to understand and how to push risk along, how to get InfoSec comfortable. I mean, when I started this conversation with our InfoSec team and said, how do we get comfortable with putting client data in? He went like this. So I think it's slowly having these conversations and making sure that people are understanding what's different about the tools that we're bringing in that cover all of our bases, and understanding those use cases. And maybe it's starting with business operations use cases if we're not comfortable putting our client data in, but just making sure that we're not just saying no when there is a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I think for maybe our firm, the thing I can highlight is we have a policy, and when I first walked in, I was just dealing with like outside counsel guidelines and making sure we can like not have to go get client consent to use the cloud, right? And so we had I felt like we all went through this, and then now we're like going through it again with like our clients. I was at a round table yesterday, and it was more client focused, and it was all around outside counsel guidelines, and they had a whole AI component to it. And I was listening to, there were some financial institutions up there of like, oh yeah, our policy is like, you cannot use it unless you talk to us. And I'm like, remember when we went through this before? And the good thing is, when I left that, it was really helpful I actually think all of those clients, it came across that we actually want you guys to use this stuff. It's just we can't trust everyone who works with us. So it's just safer for us to talk with you about it. And if you talk with us and you're reasonable, it actually is not that bad a conversation. So it was a really nice thing to hear. I will say I've been at Policies for a year and a half. During about that entire year and a half, I had to quell my FOMO. It was FOMO every day. I had people on my team saying like, it's okay, because I could see everything that was happening, everyone who was adopting whatever tool it was, piloting whatever. We were piloting, but we weren't quite adopting it. The one thing I can confidently say is I feel so good about holding off a little bit, because during that time, what we did was focus. We had a little Gen AI working policy group and we have all these different groups, but this one was probably the most important. Me in innovation, our IT CIO, InfoSec head, and general counsel. And between the four of our little areas, we have been working like meticulously to address outside counsel guidelines, client consents, what we're putting onto our solutions to put our blacklist, so that people are aware, the training we're doing around AI. And we really did a lot of that planning so that now, as we're bringing this stuff in, we have a plan. We know exactly how we're tackling our clients. We know exactly what we're doing in terms of training before we give access. We know exactly what we're putting before our lawyers. And I'll tell you, for us, it's not just a blanket, like, here's your opportunity to go have a conversation with a large language model that we gave you access to. It is more bespoke. We are putting it on a platter for folks because the truth is people just don't know how to use it well. And then they give up. And then they're like, oh, well, this sucks. This doesn't do what I can't trust anything. So we spent a good year where the entire time I was feeling like I was missing out on something, to be honest. But I look back and I feel really good about the strategy that we took and stuck with, even though it was kind of painful along the way.
Yeah, and I agree with that, with the approach that Cleary has been taking, which is spend a lot of time, unfortunately, doing the non-sexy stuff, which is the behind closed doors, really trying to figure out what your policies are, how you're going to operate. And one of the things that we're really focused on now is around process. So we have our strategy, we have our policies, but now how do we work together when we bring our products forward to go through that InfoSec checklist to make sure that we're clearing risk and doing this in a way that's really operational so we can bring a lot more products in faster and do it in a smart way. So a lot of our FOMO too, but we're really setting this up to make sure that we can move fast, which I think brings us into our change management
Can I
topic.
just add one thing? So our firm obviously took a very different strategy from them. We didn't have the FOMO. We were in there and using it. And I think your way is cleaner and more organized. But I do think that we had a lot of value by putting it out there. And
We are so grateful for firms like yours. We are so grateful.
I mean, we learned use cases that we never would have thought of. I mean, we're former practicing lawyers. We're not there. We're not figuring out how people are really going to use the day to day. So I think that was really helpful. We learned a lot of use cases that we would never have thought of. And we've already built in champions because while not everyone is taking to it right away, there are people who are using it every single day. They love it. And I think having that internal champion within the business is helping push the firm, the IT, the risk, the InfoSec a little bit more to help us use it.
And I think that's a really important point for us to lay out. When we talk about our different strategies, like, as you can see, there is no right or wrong here. It's really understanding your own firm, where the culture is, what the appetite is. And so, every time we talked about a topic, it was slightly different what each of us were doing, but it was never in a way of like, well, I did it my way and you did it your way. Like, it was just so bespoke to the firm, and I'm sure everyone knows that that's how it works in law firms. There are firms who are going to be ahead of the curve and doing it, and really on behalf of the rest of this industry. And then there are some who's like, firms just aren't ready infrastructure-wise to even think about that. And there are some firms who are just culturally not ready. And all of that is just real. This is what we all walk into in these roles. And you just figure that out and work with what you've got to make sure that you can meet your firm where they are. At the end of the day, we're all going to be in the same place. Everyone's going to be leveraging this. There's not going to be a single firm that's not. It's just a matter of what the approach is. So last topic we had was change management. This was another area that we talked about. This is probably one of my favorite functions. I didn't mention it on my slide, but if you had noticed, there was a big long line that says change management that's shared between us and Practice Innovation and IT. To me, I used to practice for many years, both in law firms and in-house. I know lawyers' attention span. I do not take it personally. They don't read a single email I send to them. This is about making sure they're hearing what you need them to hear. And to me, this is a lot about branding. This is about being punchy. This is about not overpopulating their inboxes with emails. It's being creative, doing whatever you need to do. My personal philosophy is you got to say it 7 times. They might hear it once, but you got to say it 7 times in 7 different ways, and you have a pretty good shot. We have a change management team that goes across our team and IT, trying to harmonize the conversations. If you are a lawyer in law firm, you do not care or know or care to know where that tech is coming from. It can be coming from my CIO. It can be coming from me. and they don't really care. We just want them to know that if there's important things they should be leveraging, they have to understand it, be aware of it, and they have to adopt it. Because without adoption, there is no innovation. So that's how we handle, we have all kinds of programming in change management. We have spotlights, we have road shows, we have training. We always run our communications through our knowledge and innovation attorneys first, get that reaction to say, like, are they going to read it? How are they going to react to it? We have TVs going all over the place. We'll do anything. We'll get swag. We'll do whatever.
And I think from my perspective, we have all of the same communication vehicles, except it's really the responsibility of the team that's leading that product to handle the change management. So when Kay was going into a lot more detail, Amanda and I were asking a lot of questions, because to have a dedicated team to really oversee a lot of the change management, or all of the change management for the strategy for AI and innovation, is just, like I said, a dream to have that. Again, relying on a lot of the business functions to push forward their contents, the buy-in, the adoption. You're really over-engineering a lot of the work that we're trying to accomplish. So streamlining it and having your talent really focused on it is a really great asset.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I had for Kay when she was describing this function is, what is the scope of change management? Because in my mind, change management is also about empathy and meeting the lawyers with where they're at and understanding their workflows and having that soft communication of this project's coming and giving them enough notice, and sometimes having them yell at you about what that change is going to do, and just being, okay, understand this is going to be terrible. Let's talk in 2 weeks and see how you feel. So I think there's a lot of that personal relationship and empathy that you need to have when you're making some of these large changes. For example, if you're changing the DMS or changing how they function with their email, some of these day-to-day big systems that really impact the lawyers. So I think it's understanding what that scope is, because I absolutely think we need a unified vision and unified communication. So the lawyers, I mean, we're all just business services to them, right? They just want one way of getting the information. But I think it's also who's the right person for that. So I just recently pushed our team to get certified in change management. And I don't know if we're the right people for that communication role, but I do think that we need to understand how to incorporate these principles into what we do.
Our change management team is really small. It's really just a team of 2, to be honest. And but they do help organize, like, our champions group, where we're putting these things before our associates, which we call our champions. It's different from our advisory board, which is our partners. Voluntary, really great participation from our lawyers who are interested in this stuff. They organize that. We also lean a lot on our knowledge and innovation attorneys to give us that feel of what's happening. Because even though we treat attorneys as one, the truth is each practice group is in a different place too.
That's true.
We could be rolling out the same thing and say, we're actually going to just start with these 2 groups, because our knowledge and innovation attorneys will give us that feel of, like, not ready here or not interested. So that's kind of, I mean, I feel like we did all right with our timing.
No time for questions, sorry.
That was just our chit chat. Thanks for joining us for it.
Coffee talk.
Yeah.